Why? In all honesty, I was going to call this franchise Syberia meh, but then I thought a better name would be Syberia. In fact, I invite you all at home to try to come up with a better name. I'd love to see what you come up with in the comments. But let's get down to it, shall we? True review, what the hell do you think you're doing getting Syberia 2? I thought you disliked the first game. What, did you think number 2 was going to be any better? No, shut up, you're not my real mum. And look, I was already aware of this game and the third one that came out not too long ago, and while that new one has been criticised for many things, numbers 1 and 2 were quite well received. No idea why number 1 was well received, because that game was a massive cock tease. It continuously goaded the player with promises of magical hinterlands filled with woolly mammoths, but never delivered on its own promise. Instead, we got a load of backwards and forwards objectives, and a robot who was a c***. I can sum up the entire first game in one word. Meh. And if number 1 was well received, and number 2 was well received for all the same reasons, then yeah, why did I get this game? Well, there's a good reason for that. See, after playing number 1, I promised myself that under no circumstance would I ever pay any amount of money for another title in this series, and seeing as I was offered this game for free, I suppose I wasn't being a hypocrite, and accepted it on those terms. Having said that, despite getting this game for free, I still want my money back, but whatever, I don't care. I've played this game for all it's worth, and look! Here are all the f***s I have to give right now. So, Syberia 2. It picks up practically straight away from the last one, and if you're not familiar with the last one, then here's the rundown. An American who's an American lawyer from America has travelled to what could be Germany or perhaps Eastern Europe? It's never really explained. On the purpose of buying an old company that produces automatons. She finds out that the owner is dead, but that his autistic/not autistic son is still around. This guy, however, is fascinated with a mystical place called Syberia, and after spending the entire f***ing game trying to track him down, you decide to throw away your old life and go on an adventure because why the f*** not? I mean, it's not like you've got a mortgage or a job or any other commitments going on right now. Oh, and everyone seems to call the main character by her full name for some reason. Her name is Kate Walker, yet instead of calling her Kate, everyone says Kate Walker all the time, and it gets very irritating to hear someone say, "Hello, Kate Walker," at the start of every conversation. Or perhaps that was just me. What surprised me with the first one was that someone could develop a story-driven game where nothing happens. The scenery is impressive at times, and manages to bring back some of that sweet late 90s, early 2000s nostalgia, but then never goes any further than that. It hints to us that we'll be going to Syberia at some point, but only in the sense that a hot girl in a nightclub asks you to buy her a drink purely because she's broke and sober. And much in the same way, once the first game has gotten what it wants out of you, it will then f*** off out of the room, leaving you feeling like a total tool for falling for that shit. The first game might as well have ended with the main characters going, "Let's go to Syberia!" The end. Alright, I understand that this next point is going to go over most of your heads, and this will all link into number 2 at some point, I promise, but has anyone ever read the book Atlas Shrugged? Worst book I've ever read, to be honest, couldn't finish it. And the only reason I read it was because it was the inspiration for Bioshock. Well, if you're not familiar with it, it comprises of 3 books, and it's all about the world going to shit because everyone who runs it is a retard. But don't worry, because there's this really awesome place that might not exist, where all the awesome people live, and you might get to see it at some point if you were wise enough to dump enough points into endurance at the start. What pissed me off with that book was that it spent nearly 2 whole books of pissing around to finally bring us to this place. We spend about 1 small dull chapter there, and then it's back to the rest of the boring world to kick our heels and hope that we haven't committed seppuku by the end of book 3. But all of this started to come back to me when I played Syberia 1. All this talk about an awesome place, and I started to get the impression that the game was going to hold this place hostage from us, and I had a feeling that Syberia 2 was going to commit the same crime. But in the wise words of Sonic Syndicate, I hoped for the best and planned for the worst. Now this leads me neatly onto Syberia 2, finally. Because much in the same way that Atlas Shrugged teased you with something for 1 whole book without actually going there, and then only showed us a little bit of it in the second book and it turned out to be crap, we finally do reach Syberia in Syberia 2 right at the end. Wanna know what it's like? Well, let me put it like this. My fears were realised. It's deserted and falling apart and containing about 3 puzzles before Hans decides to end the game by riding a woolly mammoth into the sunset. No, seriously, that actually happens. You start the game in this Russian village. To give you an idea of the size of this game, by the time you escape from said village, that's 50% of the game done. No lol. In fact, I finished this game in just over 5 hours. I think something in me has become irreversibly broken, because I was able to figure out most of the puzzles the moment I came across them. It's like I've become climatised to the game's way of thinking, a thought which naturally keeps me up at night. The cast from the first game are back, including Hans Vorarlberg, who can't seem to make up his mind if he wants to live or die, to which I immediately thought, well, if you're struggling, mate, then I could give you a second opinion. And Oscar the robot, who thankfully isn't in this game as much as the last one, though he still manages to show himself off as a massive whenever the opportunity arises. In one scene, Kate Walker... See, now I'm doing it! And yes, by the way, they still call her by her full name in this game. Kate Walker is being attacked by a guy who's been taken straight out of a Dickens novel, yet is in Russia for some reason. And Kate calls up Oscar for help. She tells him that she's going to be killed and she needs his help immediately. Oscar replies that it'd be an inconvenience for him. Fuck off, Oscar. Unfortunately, despite hoping that this game would have perked up a bit since the last one, it's still as humdrum and boring as the last one. There are so many sections you have to talk to one person, then go talk to another person, then go back to the first person, and then pass that message on to the other guy again. And it was at this point I realised that these two characters are acting like a married couple who are having relationship difficulties. Why can't you two just have this talk between yourselves? I could put my time to better use by... well, by not playing this game, I suppose. Also, some of the logic behind this game amazes me. I know that point-and-click games are notorious for this kind of stunt, and Syberia is certainly not the first to do it, but there are times where you'll pick up a really random object with absolutely no relevance to the plot, only for it to become an essential item much later on. In one section, about halfway through the game, you come across a Russian doll in a wood cabin. This doll stays in your inventory for almost the entire second half. When you finally do get to use it, it's used to convince a flock of penguins that they've laid another egg so that you can get past them.
Hey, you there!
Now, I'm pretty sure that this scenario was not going through Kate Walker's head when she first picked it up. That's not clever puzzle design, that's moon logic! In fact, the puzzle mechanics haven't changed in the slightest since the last game. You know what? Now that I think about it, I'm struggling to think of anything that's been changed since the last game. The UI, the graphics, the puzzle mechanics, the plot, which is basically a second half to the first game, the ship backwards and forwards objectives, it's all the same. Nothing's been changed in the slightest. We've now got more cutscenes, half of which are focused on a small side plot where Kate Walker's company are trying to track her down, and it gives us the impression that they're trying to silence her because she's getting closer to some sort of shocking truth they don't want her to know, which would have been an awesome storyline. But no, they just want her back is all, and this all gets resolved when the guy they sent to find her also runs out of fucks to give and just jacks the whole thing in when he finally comes to his senses and realises that he's standing on a frozen tundra. But you know me, I do like to talk about what is good in these videos as well as what was bad, and believe it or not, I do have a couple of good points. Number 1. Much like in the first game, this game has some good character and charm to it. The scenery is nice to look at, and I love those retro looking animations that happen outside of cutscenes, and there are times when this adds to the atmosphere as well, especially in the second half of the game. Number 2. This isn't really a positive, but stay with it. I would say that this game almost qualifies for the it's so bad that it's good genre. There were a few times where I burst out laughing at the unintentional hilarity that this game displays. The scene where Kate Walker gets blasted out of a plane had me in stitches, and I couldn't tell you why. Probably because it was so bizarre and stupid. And the scene where the bad guy gets eaten alive by penguins was something I wasn't expecting. Oh yeah, that also happens by the way, and it's funny as f***. You also get a weird animal as a companion, which the game describes as half seal, half bear, and half pig. And despite that being one hell of a retarded description, unfortunately no, this isn't a reference to South Park. And it wasn't just these scenes that made me laugh, because it looked like Kate Walker had caught the fever that I seem to have started before playing this game, in that despite how much junk she can store between her cleavage, I guess she hasn't got any more room to store some f***s in there. Oscar dies/not dies in one scene, but she gets over it quickly. Same with the bad guy getting eaten by penguins, she's over it in about 3 seconds. If I saw someone getting torn to pieces by a flock of penguins, I'd like to imagine that that's a scene that would stay with me for the rest of my life, but nope. Kate Walker is fresh out of f***s to give, and I just found that funny. In conclusion, I don't even know why I'm including this part here. You knew what this video was going to be like the moment you saw it come up on the results page, or your subscription page, whatever. It's exactly the same as the last game. It has character like the last one, sure, but that's not enough to carry it. But I think the best possible analogy I can use here is to remind you of something. I paid nothing for this game, and that's exactly what I got out of this game. So in a sense, I certainly got my money's worth.
Sometimes I think this life is killing me.